Tom, in terms of the way that Josh Smith coming back into the game in the second half had an impact, how did you see his arrival back into the game changing?
Well, I think when we doubled correctly, we turned him over some, and you just can't let him get to his strengths. I mean, obviously he's got a lot of strength, and he's very left shoulder centered with what he does to get to his right hand, and we let him have too much space. And they did a good job earlier just kicking it back out on our cuts, or on when we would go to post double. But we have to have a couple different things, and when you go down there and tie him up and get him on the dribble, you've got a better chance to get a stop with him. But they also made shots, so they did a very good job of utilizing him and at the same time running their offense. But if you let him get to his left shoulder and turn the left side of his body because of his right hand, it's very much a one-handed player. Okay, but getting to that left shoulder, I mean, he's unbelievably hard to guard. I mean, we're pushing 300 pounds there, I would think, and it's very hard to root him out. And we didn't do a great job of staying into his body, to his lower body, especially when we were trying to front him.
Conversely, just kind of what did Hunter struggle with today? It felt like finishing. He just kind of couldn't get it in to go in around the.
Yeah, he rushed a little bit. I'm more disappointed in the he's becoming more of a, I don't want to call him a defensive captain, but he's got to have more of a presence for us. And he had a hard job, hard task, obviously, with what he's trying to do defensively. But the back line of our defense got quiet, and it got quiet in the guts of the game, which was really somewhere around that 6, 7, 8 minute mark of the second half. When momentum is really up for grabs. And a couple of times he tried to score too quickly without trying to go over the top. And he played a little too fast with that, but he did some good things. But he never had the presence that we needed from him in the game. Throughout the 40 minutes that we would have needed.
Not every team will have a Josh Smith or a Montrezl Harrell, but do you feel like you have the post depth and presence you need moving into Big Ten play yet, or not?
Well, we'll see. Every game's different, so we'll see how it goes.
Coach, just larger picture. Changing up an offense and doing that in midstream the way you have from last year into this year. I'm curious if that's a bigger challenge at a place like Indiana where there's maybe a certain expectation, or does that actually work to your
I don't follow your question. I don't understand. What you say?
A more up-tempo offense and something that's more based around perimeter shooting.
Did you see us play 2 years ago?
I did, absolutely.
Yeah, we were pretty up-tempo then. We just had a lottery pick inside.
No question about it. And you've gone back and forth several times over the course of your time there. And I'm wondering whether that's more of a challenge at a place like Indiana, at a place like Georgetown, where JT3 has done something very similar a few different times.
Oh, no, I don't know if that's the challenge. I think I understand your question now. I think the decision-making is key. I think recognition. And I'll give you an example. When we put Troy, we want to have a lot of versatility with how we can get things. And they were doing a good job in their zone, but they were extending it, and they were giving us the middle. So when we did a better job of screening, putting the shooters in the corners, things of that nature, and Troy comes off the double pick and roll where he could go either way, we were getting anything that we wanted. Well, then we go into a play that we really haven't run with him at the point guard for that spot. That's where we got to have the presence of mind to say, get it back to somebody that runs this action. And so we play with a lot of freedom, all right? I want that, but we've got to continue to make our decision-making better. Today, turnovers were as big a part of our losing the game as anything else was. I mean, certainly we gave up too high a percentage in the second half. We let Devontae get far too comfortable shooting the ball. But we made some mistakes on the cuts. And Josh Smith is that's the side that you've got to really be aware of, because when he's on that left block, he can not only score it, but he can pass it. If you notice, there's no passing going on the right block, so they do a good job of playing to the strength of his left shoulder. But offensively, we want to play with a lot of pace. We just got to continue to understand simplicity wins.
Do you think going back and forth is more a function of the 21st century of recruiting, where you're going to get a guy like Noah, that's going to change the way you play, as opposed to the way a lot of teams really had a defined standard of play, the way they used to operate?
The history of my teams at Marquette and here have always been, we want to try to play fast, play with good pace. But we've got a lot of shooters on this team. Last year we didn't have as many. And we were very poor decision makers, and we turned the ball over too much. We would have tried to play a lot faster last year. But we still get the ball in the paint. Now, we didn't today. We didn't do it nearly well enough today. You know, we've got to get the ball in the paint to create our drive and kick game, our drop-off game, and I think you saw when we're doing that, you know, we get a lot of really good stuff. When we're not getting in the paint, then we're not as good.
Tom, this event, it's a single game at Madison Square Garden. It's not part of a Jimmy V or anything like that. Obviously, you know all about the Garden, but what does a game here do for the University of Indiana, a standalone game like this? Why is it appealing?
First off, we were honored to be asked, and Joel Fisher, who's the president of the Garden, had called to see if we'd be interested. Had a couple different options on teams. Georgetown was the one that chose it, and I think anytime you've got a chance to come into this environment, you know, let me give you the best example. Jim Calhoun and Seth Greenberg and John Shamby were at our practice yesterday. Okay, so I asked him to speak to our team. And Jim Calhoun, who's had 39 pros, he's had 33 guys, this is unbelievable, 33 guys that played at least 5 years in the NBA. They made over $1 billion, the whole deal. And he knew exactly how many games he'd coached in the Garden. I've coached 82 times in the Garden. I mean, now that's one of the great coaches of all time, right? In my book, he's as good as it gets, right? So he knew exactly how many times he'd been to the Garden. I've told our team that a couple of times. It doesn't matter what you do in your career. He's coached everywhere, won national championships. When you're in a place like this, you know it. And I think that puts it into perspective. You know, we have guys that may never get to play back in here again. And I think it's a great thing. The East Coast is obviously a huge part for Indiana when it comes to alums. The New York metropolitan area is second behind the Chicago area when you remove Indiana from the alumni base. We have the third largest alumni base in the country. They're going to continue to get young people to come to college. You know, there's people that are doing great things in this area that are alums, and it's an honor to be here. And we'd certainly like to come out with the win. But it also gives us a chance to come in, and we didn't get to have Christmas with our families, you know, with this game, but it did allow us to come in here, and especially the East Coast kids, be able to spend some time with their families, and which I think is important as well. And I've never seen more people in my life than what I saw last night out around Times Square when we were coming back on the bus. I mean, there might have been more people somewhere, but you had to be, if we would have played as tough on the glass as people had to show their toughness last year shopping, we'd have won the game by 10. You know, we just didn't.
With about 9 minutes left, when you put Honor down, went with Troy, mainly at center. Was that something game specific, or is that something?
Wasn't Colin in too?
Colin was in too.
Yeah, so Colin ended up being.
Was that just this game, or is that something you liked to have be a part of?
Colin does a good job fronting the post. Remember when we got Josh Smith's third foul in the first half, Colin was fronting him.
Right.
So really, it's no, we've done that before. Victor would guard those guys. Will she? I mean, it's just a matter of when you got to have versatility on both ends of the court, offense and defense. And we're not a huge team. I mean, right? So you got to have different people that can do different things. But Josh is hard to front because they can throw it over the top. And we had a couple different dribble schemes, but in a perfect world, you're sitting in his body and you're not letting him, you know, get loose. The one thing you cannot do, and we did it and got a foul, is you cannot try to get around him when the ball is being passed. You're either in front or you're behind. And I about lost my mind on that. I mean, you can't do that. He's just too big of a person. But the bottom line is, if you take away the left side of his body a little bit, you take that left shoulder away, he's a little bit more defendable. And when we did that and got the double down there in time, we were good. When we didn't, he scored, because you're not going to move him.
Mike, is this, I guess the last 2 weeks, is this the Troy you've been waiting to see?
Oh, I don't know. We just lost the game, so I'm not really in that mode right now. But Troy just needs to continue to make the game simple. And he's got a lot of talent. He's grown up a bunch in the last couple of weeks since we were here. But he just needs to keep understanding, you know, how to do his job. And we're working on expanding his job every day in practice. But when you're in the game, just play. And again, he has a lot of edge, and you're going to get a couple of plays that you'd like to have back. If you're going to run, you're going to have some plays. Now, 17 turnovers, we're not going to win with 17 turnovers. That's far too many, especially late in the game where we had a couple. But he just got to continue to get better defensively, be committed to the glass, move without the basketball, and when he does have the ball in his hands, continue to find open people. because we love his edge, love how much he's improving, and if he stays on that path, he'll be very good.
Tom, can you talk about Yogi's ability to get the ball into overtime in those 2 threes?
Yeah, Yogi's a big shot maker. You know, last time we played Georgetown, it was in the Barclays, he had a big 3 in overtime. I mean, Yogi's one of the better guards in the country, and nobody feels worse about this game right now than he does, because, you know, in his matchup, his guy got some buckets, and Yogi's a guy that brings tremendous presence, and it wasn't alone. I tell them, no one ever just wins the game, just like nobody ever just loses the game. You know, everybody's looking for responsibility, you know, of blame or responsibility of credit. It's everybody, and we've just got to continue to build through that. But we've got some guys that can make shots at the end, and Yogi got some really good looks.
Zach?
Just, I guess, going back to Troy, I know you said you aren't totally thinking about it this way right now, but how much of this is kind of a growing pains game for him with how well he plays at one end and then also the turnovers? Is it kind of one of those things where you have to, how do you, I guess, get him to digest a game like this where he does a lot well and then makes some mistakes at the end?
Keep coaching him hard, because that's what he needs. And you can't, Troy's not a guy who can get real comfortable. Very much like Vic. You know, they're very much like that. There's an edge to their game. There's also a stubbornness to their game, and you got to be more stubborn than they are, and I have no trouble with that. So, but at the same time, I'm going to be the biggest protector, just like I'm going to be the biggest critic, because I know what he's capable of, and we're going to continue to work towards that constantly. And when it's not there, and it wasn't there at the start of the game, you know, and almost subbed him out, it's got to be there constantly. He's got to play the game that he's capable of playing. And our guys, they understand. When they're moving the ball, when we're spacing the court, when we're getting stops defensively, I mean, we have a very good team. When we're not attacking, when we're taking the ball in the net constantly because we're making a mistake defensively, or get beat on a back cut, we're not nearly as good. But when we're overdoing it, and again, our errors were, we were trying to make plays. You know, 2 weeks ago or whatever it was when we were here, we held the ball too long. We didn't pass the ball well enough against Louisville. Today we passed it, and sometimes we overpassed it. I think we're going to see the film. And this goes maybe back to your question. I think we're going to see the film and see we passed up numerous open threes that we need to take. And as long as that ball's touching the paint, and as long as it's going through the paint, those are the threes we want. You know, you can go inside out. This is another answer to your question. You can go inside out through the post by passing it and swinging it out. You can go inside out through the drive. The best teams can do both. We're getting better at being able to play through the post, but we have to be really good at being able to play through the drive. And when you play through the drive and you get it into the lane and you make the help, especially with the way they watch the ball, they all converge on the ball, and our whole thing is to draw a crowd and kick it. Don't drive into a crowd and try to make a play, because they really come to the ball. And you could see their emphasis was heavy on the closeouts, and we're shooting, you know, 3 free throws because they closed out hard, right? So when you space and you go like that and you get the ball in and you get it out, we're a good team. That's what our team's got to continue to understand, the simplicity of it.
Last question. I'm sorry.
From your bench and Hunter tonight, you get 4 points. Why is that, and how hard is it to win when you're not getting contributions?
Yeah, I haven't looked at the stats hard enough yet. We usually get a really good production out of our bench. So I don't know. I'll have to go look at that on the film. I would think that, you know, when you watch the film, you got to stay disciplined enough as a coach to study the defense, okay, and then study what you didn't do as well, all right, and then really go hard on what you did do, so you can keep building on that. So when we watch it, I think we're going to see we made some defensive mistakes off the bench, and as a whole, we weren't nearly as vocal enough in the second half. You know, there's always a point in time in the game where momentum is up for grabs, and there were numerous times in the game. But when you feel it, and it's really bouncing back and forth, that's when somebody's got to step up and grab it. That's not a bench thing, that's a team thing. And so, you know, I haven't studied the numbers enough to really have an answer for you on that, but I'm sure we'll find some things. All right. Thank you. Happy holidays.